everybody, and welcome to MLE Esports presented by APM Music. My name is Bass from the past, and joined alongside me today is the one, the only Novanta. Welcome to the booth, my friend. How are you doing on this fine afternoon?
I can't say I'm doing well because I'm doing better than well. Second week of the season and things are already ramping up. We got ourselves a contest, a clash, a battle that's made for our nightmares as the Shadows take on the Sharks.
Indeed they do. This is going to be Champion League, and the interesting thing about this one, Novanta, as we were talking behind the scenes, is that this is a little bit of a grudge match between the two teams. There's a little bit more on the line than just being in Champ League for this one. They're also in the same division, so this is going to be an extremely important game. They got to take this one very seriously, make sure that every single game counts, because it really does count more now than ever.
There's a little bit of sauce when you have a division rivals, but put on that the fact that Champion League is one of the more hotly contested leagues here in MLE, where you're going to have yourselves a barn burner, and we're here for 5 games. We play all 5 games in this set, so it's going to be an epic clash any way you slice it.
Exactly, and the biggest thing about it is making sure to get that game differential as beneficial as possible. Even if you end up taking those 3 losses, fight for those back 2 and give yourselves a -1 on the day rather than -5. It's about making sure you put in the full effort for every single one of the games and every single second that you are on the pitch, and I think that's exactly what we can come to expect here in Champ League. It's, as you said, highly contested, really solid talent all around. The big thing is showing up the minute that you hit the field.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Those wins matter now, today for pride, but for playoff implications later on. That's why we say it often, because we mean it. Every game counts, every series counts, every rivalry counts, especially when it's here in division.
100%. And here today with the Sharks versus the Shadow, this is going to be an extremely tense matchup, and I honestly am not sure which way this is going to go. Both of the teams are extremely solid. Have had, I'd say, a pretty good start to so far, but it's really going to come down to, I would say, how well they're able to adapt to these teams. A lot of the time at this level, especially at Champ, it's about teams that are able to make those necessary movements as the game goes on and are able to be advantageous against the other squads. So if we see the same sort of stuff going throughout all 5 games, I'd be very surprised. A lot of the time, game number 1 doesn't look anything like games 4 and 5 in a series like this.
Yeah, both these teams were kind of under the radar when it came to draft weekend. We don't really know what these forms are going to be, what these lineups are, but that's what makes having this matchup so early in the season so beneficial. Both teams have a chance to see how strong they are against teams in the division with a lineup that's not quite finalized, but the way these 2 teams are playing, it might as well be.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the biggest things right now, is feeling out your team and figuring out how you want to play, and finding that good strategy that meshes with every single player on the team. And well, we're gonna have to find out whether or not they can do exactly that. Game number 1 underway. Sharks in the blue, Shadow in the gray. Let's see what they've got with 5 minutes on the clock.
So glad to be part of this matchup, and so glad to be with you, Bass from the past, because you're going to have yourself some goals that would be clip-worthy, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I can believe it 100%. And this is going to be a really interesting back and forth for another reason. I do want to point out that one of the players on the field right now has a little bit of, I'd say, RLCS experience, but not in the way that you might expect. Jimmer is actually the coach of a plethora of different RLCS and RLRS teams. Even has the tag on right now for Rival Series number 6, but unfortunately, despite his previous experience, it's not going to really help them. Sharks up 1-0 early.
Well, the name of the game, Baz, is What Have You Done For Me Lately? And the Sharks have opened the scoreline 1-0 with 30 seconds elapsed in game 1.
That is very true. As much as he does have the Rival Series 6 tag, he has been working on some newer teams as a coach, but at the same time, coaching is one thing. Being able to play well is a whole other ball game, and despite that, they are still going to stay in this one. A good kickoff goes in favor, and the Shadow will immediately equalize.
Well, there's a story in 30 seconds. We said both teams are going to be even, and we have ourselves a goal apiece. 1-1, we're tied up.
This is going to be an interesting back and forth here, as we're only about 30 seconds into the game, and already we have gotten the 1-1, and I think we just got a fake kickoff as well. The Sharks trying to implement some interesting strategies very early in the game. I like the switch up, but it might have been a bit too early to show that hand. Sometimes when you reveal strategies like that this early, teams can start to predict them as the series goes on.
Well, when the series goes on, 2 things come to play. That is your stamina, the mental energy, the toughness it takes for your team to pull ahead. But definitely, how do you adapt to the shifting strategies of your opponents? And, well, with a tie scoreline, it's anyone's game there. But I have to give the edge to the Sharks because they're using a lot more of the pitch to their advantage.
100%. The Sharks right now seem to be in a little bit more control of the flow, but some inopportune touches on the back end are going to leave them vulnerable. Jimmer tries to rip off a shot, but Bledsoe gets in the way, and now might even have the counterattack. No one's on defense. Open net, and Bledsoe will go cross court and put the Sharks up 2-1.
You don't leave open nets quite like that, and Bledsoe had the one touch that was super important to give them much space and to act as a zone defenseman if needed. 2-1 the Sharks.
Really, really good start so far here from the Sharks. I'm liking the variation in the way that they're playing, whether it be different kickoffs or also trying to go from passive to ultra aggressive. It's something that I think we need to see adaptations from the Shadow right now, because they're leaving themselves very vulnerable on the back end, playing a bit too aggressive, and then an easy shot rips on target, but as a double commit comes in the final third, the Sharks are probably going to have to go back to the drawing board here. Philo going to get a good 50-50, going to send it into the Sharks half now. The Shadow are going to have a chance on offense. Yoko to the center, cut off by Storm, but another pass to the center and no one is there. Again, the missed rotations from the Shadow are coming back to bite them. They need to be careful. They're pushing a bit too far out from midfield and aren't quite able to have that midfield presence necessary.
It definitely is a tale of two different teams, so the Sharks just seems a little bit more crisp on their rotations, using every player needed on the mid-pitch, on the walls. I mean, this right here is a full-on assault, giving yourself multiple options for shots on goals. But the Shadow are just resourceful, and they tie it up once more.
And there's that ultra aggression working out perfectly for them. Philo off the backboard. Jimmer immediate dives into this one, and while Storm is there, and so is I believe it was Hobo, I think. I want to say it wasn't Bledsoe there. Wasn't quite sure to catch the name, but basically two defenders in net, neither one of them able to get there just because of the pure aggression we're seeing out of the Shadow, and it might just give them another goal as well. Kickoff goal now going in favor of the Shadow.
Well, that last goal is going to give some credit to the crossbar being involved, but this one was pure just ingenuity, to say the least. The Shadow seems to find their form, and at a moment too soon. We're about halftime, a little before that, and they lead 3-2.
Really interesting back and forth so far here, but this is what we were expecting. We knew both of these teams were extremely strong, and we knew they were going to be very tense. The thing I wasn't really expecting was such a shootout. We're not even halfway through the game and already have 5 goals, Novanta.
Well, the thing about the Champion League is they use space, and so we have gaps in the mid-pitch. Goals are going to happen either way you slice it, but you're right. I had no idea this was going to be such a flurry of goals so early in this series.
Yeah, really an interesting battle so far here, and we've got over 2 minutes remaining, and we might just have, oh no, I was going to say another goal for the Sharks, but a miss from Hobo is going to leave them vulnerable, and Jimmer will score it on the other end.
Well, that's the thing about Rocket League. Here today, gone tomorrow. Just a minute and a half ago, I was saying, wow, what a good formation from the Sharks. And the Shadow just cut right through that. They're leading up by 2, 4-2, the Shadow.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I think the adaptations are starting to show themselves, but I'm not sure if they're in the right way right now. The Sharks are trying to play a little bit more aggressively, and I think that's because of the fact that the Shadow are playing aggressively and have the lead, but doubling down upon mistakes is not really going to do you any benefit. They need to be a little bit more coordinated, because I would say that was probably the strongest they looked this entire series, Novanta, was when they had a really clean 3-person rotation.
Well, that was just it. You had the clean rotation, and the idea is to make your opponent play your game, but the Shadow was just so annoying that the Sharks said, okay, hands down, let's go. And, well, when's the last time you put your hands down in a boxing match? It doesn't end well, and that's what they're down by 2 currently. Finally get one back here, though. Good for Bledsoe.
Yeah, down by 1 now, and this is just a good coordinated play. This is the type of rotation we were looking for. Storm jumps into the middle of that one. Could have tried to rush a shot, but leaves it for Bledsoe to slam that into the back of the net. And that's the type of passing plays we're hoping for out of the Sharks if they want to keep this series close. With just about 100 seconds left on the clock, they have got a chance to do exactly that. But 50-50 for Storm from the kickoff is now going to give them some offensive presence up to the sky, but Bledsoe decides to not go for that one. Instead, lets Yoko slam it all the way back into their own end, where they will restart the offense once again. The Jimmer gets in the way. It's going to be a little bit easier said than done. The Shadow are not going to allow that much room, and they might have given a bit too much here, but the flick is not powerful enough. Bledsoe does get it to the center, where a follow-up can arrive from Storm, but an easy save from Philo. They're going to have to go all the way back to their own end and restart the offense once again.
Well, the Sharks had one mission, that was to stop the bleeding and get the lead back, and they get it with a passing play that's already play of the week status.
Oh my word. We're mentioning how much the passing plays are going to be integral in this game, and oh my word, are they ever. Bledsoe reads that perfectly from a pass from Storm, and 4-4. We are all tied up with exactly a minute remaining here, and this is only game number 1 of the series, Novanta.
Yeah, the topsy-turvy series, we're seeing both different teams go over the different formations. It's already been a classic, and it comes down to the stamina. Which team doesn't have one extra shred of ingenuity to put past themselves the other squad? It's anyone's game right now.
It really is, and it's one of the more interesting ones because we've seen this before. There are two types of ways that games usually end when they're this tense. It's usually either a defensive error that leaves a team vulnerable, or it's an incredible shot that just comes out of nowhere. And to be honest, the teams look pretty solid on defense right now. I'd be very surprised to see it be a defensive error that ends this battle. I'm more expecting a really high caliber goal. The types of goals we've seen so far have been pretty incredible. So if we can get one more really solid passing play, that could be the end of this one. But Jimmer, the only one back here, has to just buy time for his team, as here come the Sharks one more time for probably the last attack of this game. A shot on target, but it's not powerful enough. A similar shot on target from Hobo, but saved out by Philo. And this one's going to drop out of midfield. Might actually be the Shadow with the last attack of the game. To the ground, though, and they will not get the shot. Overtime we go in game number 1.
In an overtime situation, both squads were hanging back in defense to counterattack, but they both had the same idea. So, to your point, the name of the game now is that short pass. Activate that third man in the mid-pitch for a wide attack to give yourself a chance. Or forget what I said, because the Sharks win game 1 in OT.
Only 13 seconds in, they made quick work of this one, and I got to give credit to Hobo here, just running the backfield. Demo on one, tries to bump the other, and no one home afterwards. Shark take the lead here in the series 1-0. And if this is the type of intensity we're going to expect for this series, I'm not sure if I'm going to have the energy to go back and forth this much.
It's already working at 1,000%, and there's more to go. And, well, I think these are the kind of things you want to see in the division and even in Champion League. I can argue that this league has the most parity among all the other leagues here at MLE, because each team, each game could come out ahead. And the Sharks went all the way to overtime to do it. By the end of that one, it was all them.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That really was one of these things where the Sharks seemed to have more control of the game as the time went on. It really did look like a good back and forth between the two teams, but the unfortunate truth is that the Sharks kind of realized their strategy really early, and they just doubled down upon it without much response from the Shadow. The passing plays they were able to develop on repeat really gave them benefit, and whenever they got into offense, they had so much overwhelming pressure that their opponents didn't really know what to do. So for the Shadow right now, it's about trying to figure out that middle ground between over-aggression and playing a bit more passively. So we're going to have to see what happens here. Shadow definitely did play a really good game, but I think they need to find a little bit of a middle ground to the way they play.
Well, that may be what they should do, but I've seen enough games, my friend Bass, to say what they will do, and that is go, hey, look, our aggressive play didn't work. Let's double down and be even more aggressive, which is a mistake. They should be doing what you're saying. Find that middle ground. That's how you win series. But more often than not, even games is when the demos come out, and hopefully I'm wrong with that one as well as we head over down to Neo Tokyo.
Oh, come on. You're not a demo fan? I love demos. Demos are one of my favorite parts of Rocket League. That high-flying action is great, but every once in a while I just want to see cars pop on the field. It's sometimes such an also important strategy in Rocket League because, yes, sometimes it is a little bit vulnerable. If you try and dive for a demo and you don't quite get it, all of a sudden you're leaving your team on the back end to try and recover from your mistake. But at the same time, if you can get a really good demo on offense and just leave the other team on their back heel and awkward, there's so much pressure you can get from that. So similarly to what we were saying before, I think there is a middle ground there. If they want to try and play aggressive with demos, they can do so, but they need to be careful on their defense for sure.
I'm all about demos. Don't get me wrong. I love making cars go bluey. But the idea is once you have a demo is, then what? You can't do it and say, my job here is done. And I'm not quite seeing the links up in the midfield with the passes to make that warrant a sound strategy. But you're right. Figure that part out, then, man, have yourself a bump city or a bump party and invite Novanta, because I love those things.
I think you would always get an invite, Novanta. I'd be honestly, I think it's a shame if you're not invited to every single party here at the MLE. So, right. Jokes aside, though, at this point, seriously, this game has been pretty incredible so far. It's only been one game. We got 9 goals within just about 5 minutes with a little bit of overtime spread in there. But I'm really excited to see what the type of adjustments we do see because, like you said, a lot of teams are willing to double down upon their mistakes and sort of try and play aggressive most of the time. Sure. And it really is one of these things where I don't know if that's going to be a viable strategy, but there's also a chance it could be. Teams at this rank sometimes, if you just play it fast enough, if you outpace them, they sometimes get flustered and don't know what to do.
Well, placing flustering your opponent's name of the game and par for the course, and I agree with you there. But the first game for me has definitely been about the efforts of Bledsoe and the efforts of Jimmer on both sides of their team, being able to be found when needed, using the walls to their advantage. It's really about shutting them down, cutting off their air supply to make sure your team has the advantage.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge part about it, is making sure to not give them, well, as you put it, air. It's really the space. That's something that a lot of teams can develop with. If you give enough teams space, not even in the air, just on the field in general, you'll see passes passing plays like we saw in the last game, and that's a huge part about it. If you want to play with a lot of aggression, you need to make sure the aggression is towards a single player and not just a single play. It sounds a little bit weird, but the big thing is making sure to cut off that space when someone's trying to develop a play rather than trying to just cut off space for the entire play that's going on. It's a very, very, I'd say, technical difference between the two types of play style, but it really is going to be advantageous if you do it correctly, making sure to not give players the ability to pop off as a solo and just forcing them into these more intricate plays where your team can back you up.
Well, backing up yourself is definitely, or backing up your teammates is definitely part of the course as well. You want to be able to give at least the appearance of a second scoring option, because if you have someone who's a clear quote-unquote striker in this game, it's very easy to put them out of the play, whether our bumps or demos, or just crowding their shooting lanes or passing lanes. So whether or not you have a bona fide second or third scoring option is great, but even if you have the threat of one, is really what makes teams stronger, especially in a high-level play such as Champion League. I'm looking at the Shadow here. Even though Jimmer's done exceptionally well, I'm looking for more of a balance with the other two teammates to be able to push up in that third part of the pitch, to be able to have themselves as a second scoring option, or even a insurance policy, something gets knocked on the crossbar of the post to just put more shots in goals and more chance for them to even up the series.
Yeah, 100%. I think that there needs to be a solid rotation from these teams, because that's one of the biggest things we've seen, I would say, at pretty much every level, Novanta, is that there are teams where if you just have one of your three not really play up to level, that's going to be the end of the day. There's not really much you can do there. You need to make sure that every single player that is playing is at their best peak and at least trying to play it somewhat safely. If one person decides to cut rotation, there goes the rest of your rotation. It doesn't matter if the other two players are playing well. You need to make sure that all three players are in sync, and that's going to be extremely important as we get into game number 2, finally underway here. The Sharks are up 1-0, trying to take a 2-0 lead, which would put them on match point, or at least guarantee them the series, to put it simply. But I don't think they're going to go down that easily, Novanta. The Shadow are going to want that equalizer.
Oh, absolutely. Best of 5s are always fun for me, because it's a kind of mix of hitting fast and striking hard, and also the mental energy needs to have more of a long series, much like we have the 7s or best of 11s as well. And if you're the Shadow, now more than ever, like you said, you want to even it up. And that was the first shot on the net, but the crossbar had other plans.
Oh my word, and it goes right back to what you were saying earlier, Novanta. Where is the second man in that rotation? Off the bar like that, you at least need someone diving to make sure that they can throw that into the back of the net, and it just didn't arrive. Jimmers was out at midfield there, did not want to press too far up because they weren't sure where the third one was, and as a result, it's just not really the type of gameplay we're hoping for. Shadow need to try and change their rotations very quickly, because it stands right now. Wait a minute, I was going to say they're playing a bit too sloppy, but so is the defense. Sharks not able to make a touch, and the Shadow were up 1-0.
I can tell you that first goal hitting the crossbar really changed the mood in the room, and Jimmer made sure this was, without a doubt, a ball past the net. 1-0 the Shadow.
Good, advantageous gameplay so far there from the Shadow. They saw that little bit of adjustment needed to be made, and they did not give up a second chance here. A minute into the game, and we're going to look for a Sharks response, but as they're still a little bit flustered on defense, they're giving tons of time and space. Jimmer doesn't get a shot on target, but this is what we were talking about when we said cut off these plays. We're not really seeing that from the Sharks, as they're just giving tons of free space to the Shadow, and they're doing it again. Bledsoe throws this one up to the ceiling. It's an immediate touch out of the Shadow there, and all of a sudden, all that pressure the Sharks had on offense is completely gone.
Well, you know, that early goal really changed the dynamic here in this series, and now the Shadow sitting with a 1-goal lead, and I can tell you, when you're up 1-0, it's the worst scoreline ever, because you have that pressure to double that scoreline as quickly as possible. Let's hope the Sharks have an equalizer.
Fortunately for them, though, it looks like it's a 2v3 here, as one of their players had committed all the way into the other half, trying to get back into a good defensive rotation. But as there's tons of pressure out of the Shadow, it's looking not that likely, but all of a sudden, it's a cross-court shot from Bledsoe. Finds its way all the way back to Philo, though, and they will restart the offense once again. And this is a big issue for the Sharks right now, as they're kind of just dumping the ball out of their half and hoping that something develops. But when you get a double commitment, it's not going to matter. The Shadow with one fatal mistake on defense.
One critical mistake, you left it up to the crossbar, and well, you rolled snake eyes on that one. Easy pickings, and the Sharks find their equalizer.
Oh, it's so unfortunate to see such good defense out of the Shadow. They were really starting to figure out the rotation for such a good amount of time, and all it took was one mistake. But that's something we hinted upon in game number 1 as well, Novanta. Sometimes that's just how the series goes, is one mistake, and that's all it's going to take for a goal to happen. And so far, that's exactly that. We're about halfway through this game. Neither team, I would say, playing too confidently. It seems like the game one full of just shots everywhere has kind of gone out the window. Now they're playing very patiently, almost too patient to my liking.
Well, I gotta agree with you there. It's very interesting to see at the Champion League level so many double commitments, especially in the corners, leaving that third man for the Shadow out on an island, and that's how you put yourself in trouble. We have a 1-1 scoreline, but even though we are tied up, I still have to give the edge to the Sharks.
Just a little bit right now. The Sharks just look like they're being a bit more advantageous, while the Shadow, they were trying to be advantageous, but they every once in a while have these double commitments like we see right there that just kind of throw all of that pressure that they were developing out the window. They need to be very careful right now. They have not necessarily gotten punished too severely from those double commitments. Yes, they do have the only goal of this game is from that, but they've done it enough times that realistically, if the Sharks wanted to, it could probably be a 3-4 scoreline, or 3 or 4.
That's actually the most frustrating part if you're a Sharks supporter, because you're clearly the better team on the pitch right now currently, but the scoreline is still level. You open the door to chance for a free goal to hit against you. If you're the Sharks, now more than ever, you have to put this game away.
100%. This is your game to win. It is, I would say, very confused. I was going to say it's very much a game that you probably should have a couple more goals for, but not like this. Yoko in the center, not quite sure why they didn't even try to go up for this one.
I think the defense got caught flat-footed, just couldn't judge it, and decided to let it go. And you know, the worst you can do in this game is hesitate. 2-1 the Sharks.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is kind of the issue. Sometimes if you hesitate for even a moment, you no longer have the option to, oh my word, even make the save. That was a pretty interesting save coming out of the Shadow there as they slammed it against their backboard. Almost no goaling, but they will get away with it for now. And they're not quite out of this one yet, Novanta. There is over a minute remaining, and the Shadow have gotten a couple really good chances on offense.
Well, they get a lot of clean chances with the scoreline. Is still 1 goal separates these two squads. Like I said before, a 1-goal lead could be worse than being tied or being down, because there's a bit of an expectation to maintain that lead, and one false move can make this a whole different game.
100%. The big thing for everyone on the Sharks right now is finding that insurance, giving themselves a little bit of room to breathe. And as Hobo goes for the demo in midfield, it's not really going to do much for the offense. I like the idea, but the Sharks are kind of playing a little bit too risky right now. I feel like they're jumping at the ball just to jump at the ball and waste time. Meanwhile, let's give the Shadow now a chance to try and go down the other end, but no one gets a shot on target. The initial touch wasn't bad, but the follow-up was not there, and they will have to restart once again. But I do think the Shadow have the time to at least get one good offense in here. And as Jimmer centers this one, Yoko will be up and gets the shot on target. Wait, Billow gets the shot. Is there a follow-up I didn't see?
Well, it looked like there was a little bit of a roll in there, and it wasn't quite. Oh, the resurrect! That's amazing. I was going to say, Bass, there is some merit into doing the clock management thing, but you have to have complete control of the ball, unless mistakes happen quite like that.
Exactly. That's one of the biggest things, is making sure that you're maintaining that pressure and giving yourselves the best chance possible to minimize mistakes. And unfortunately, that's not what we saw here. The Sharks in a risky position and do get scored upon. And I think we might just have our second overtime in a row if the Sharks let this one hit the ground, which they might not. No, indeed they do. Wanted one last goal before the end of regulation, but can't quite get it. So overtime, game number 2 we go.
Well, I can't do myself any favors and drink a balls guarana and watch this game, because my heart's in my chest. 2-2, a second overtime in this series, and it's anyone's game. And if you're the Sharks, it must be incredibly frustrating, because of all the rotations you did, all the good passes you did, you're still level with a team that is scratching and clawing at your eyes right now.
A little bit, and unfortunately they're playing a bit too, oh my word, hesitant for my liking on the back end. That shot rips off the bar and goes back out, but as you can see, the Sharks are playing very patiently right now and allowing the Shadow to kind of control the pace of the pitch. They need to try and give themselves a little bit more advantage on offense, or they just get an open net. Jimmer comes in out of nowhere, makes the save, and will keep the game alive for now. But Novanta 40 seconds into overtime, and you can tell just how intense this is going to be.
Jimmer with the scorpion kick clear. I don't know how many people have a lot of those in overtime period, but it was epic to say the least.
Indeed it was. This is going to be an interesting back and forth here, as we're starting to see the Shadow develop a much better rotation than they had in regulation. Yoko, that's a bit of an inopportune touch. Jimmer is there, but so is Hobo, but no one has the touch. A huge opportunity for both sides, but as the touch does not arrive, instead it's a bit of a midfield stalemate here. One good chance, though, now as it goes off the backboard. Storm does get credited with a shot, and so does Philo with the save, but oh my word, I didn't think that was really going to be much of an offense. The Sharks prove me wrong as they do rip off a very lethal shot. The save in front of the net will keep the dream alive for right now as we go back and forth and back and forth. Shadow do get another chance on offense, but they abandoned their defense because of it. No one home on the back, and the Sharks will finish this one out.
Look, I understand you put Jimmer on the wall, you call him the bank, and he's bailing out the Shadow, but you need someone upfield, and well, the Sharks took well advantage of that one. They're sitting at series point.
Oh my word, my hands are on my head right now. I just feel so bad for the Shadow. The Sharks really played such a great game that game, but the Shadow were keeping up with them the entire time, really starting to show some greater signs of life as the series went on. For them to fall to a commitment like that out at midfield for an open net on the other end is just... I got a feel for the team at this point. Shadow are getting so incredibly close to being able to get that first game on the board, but they're just inches away from it every time, Novanta.
Well, if your hands are on your head, did you bet your challenge points? I mean, that was a sound of accuracy, Bass. I mean, look, we all said it before. The second game, there's a lot right on the line. There was a bit more of those bumps and demos that we did predict going into this one, but ultimately it was the core mechanical mistakes the Sharks capitalize on. When you get to champion level, those things are just unforgiving. There's the double commits in the corners or something you'll see in the league I play in Foundation League. Not at Champion League level. You can't win games that way. But look, there's still a lot of time left. This is only game 3 of a 5 game series set. There is a little bit of reverse sweep action, especially if you're a Shadow supporter, but those core things have to change. As good as Jimmer is, to be able to only conscript him to be the last line of defense all the time is not how you win games.
No, 100%. And we've seen that so many times with Jimmer being the most responsible player out at midfield. They see one of their teammates cut, and rather than trying to also, make up because, hey, that was supposed to be their ball in the first place, they just kind of fall into the background and make sure to make up for the missed rotations. And as much as I think that's a great idea, Jimmer shouldn't be put into that position on repeat. That's not their job to do. They need to be just rotating normally, and oh my word, a normal rotation that might have been, but a weird one at that. Yoko with a pre-jump that somehow still gets in the way, and that might even give Shadow a chance on offense here as they start to develop some pressure.
A little bit of a malfunction at the junction there with that Claire, but you're right, that almost gave the Shadow the first chance to score in this one.
Huge opportunity, and with 30 seconds gone now, there is a lot of interesting pressure coming out from the Shadow. Sharks look extremely vulnerable on the back end as there have been a couple of double commits, but finally they get some midfield presence now. They might just be able to develop an offense because of it, but more passive play and then a double commit. Shadow have got the Sharks on their back heel right now.
Well, that's what we need to do. Look, there's nothing much left to have a sweep happen against you, right? So you just go all you can, 120%, and now we're seeing what these teams are made of.
Indeed we are. This is really, I would say, the action we were hoping for. We mentioned that games 1 and 2 are not going to look like games 4 and 5. But here in game number 3, we can see, I was going to say, I don't think it's the same story, but an open net left open by the Shadow once again. Jimmer does get back in time and makes the save, but Shadow still a little bit too aggressive. They're leaving their back end open on repeat right now.
Yeah, look, we're still tied at 0-0. The Sharks have 2 games to their tally in this best-of-5 series set. At MLE, we play all 5 games because every game counts, every series counts. We almost had a break of the deadlock here. This is breaking down in a hurry, Bass.
It's starting to get a little bit more interesting than the last 2 games, not necessarily because it's tenser than the last 2, but because we're starting to see some inconsistencies that can be poked at a little bit more here. The question is which team is going to take advantage first. Thought it might be the Sharks on that one, but not quite able to slot something in, so instead Philo goes the other end, a miss from Bledsoe, and 1-0 the Shadow go up.
Man, that's one thing when you let goes past the net, but one that could so easily been swatted away. Bledsoe was the unfortunate attempt, but it wasn't enough. 1-0 Shadow.
Just got a feel for Bledsoe there, doing so many good things on defense, and for one mistake to cost them the lead is just absolutely heartbreaking here. But I would say this is kind of why we mentioned the inconsistencies, and we're seeing the weirder rotations from these teams. Part of rotations is not just being able to be in the right place at the right time, but being in the right place in case something goes wrong. If your opponents are going, or excuse me, if your teammates are going to make a mistake, which they will, no team is perfect. If they make a mistake, you need to be be ready for said mistake and back them up. As much as it's great to have that third man on defense that is pretty consistent, if they make a mistake once, you need to make sure that there's someone else to back them up.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and to add a little onto that as well, here we are at MLE 2 Saturday night, second week of the season. There is a bit of stream jitters here, because a lot of these double commits wouldn't have happened, I can guarantee you, any other day of the week.
Yeah, 100%. I do think that being on stream adds a whole nother level of pressure that most people would not expect, but they've got to make sure to maintain their composure right now as there are 2 minutes remaining, and it looks like the Shadow are going to be up 2-0. Sharks a little bit too rushed, and no one home on the other end.
Well, Yoko with the pass, but got blown up for this effort, and it's easy pickings for Philo, and well, anyone's going to hit those any day of the week. 2-0, and now the Shadow look like they have an opportunity to put this series within one.
So I know we've been mentioning the entire series that the Sharks look like they need to make some adjustments, that they need to try and figure out their rotations a little bit cleaner, but before this it was more critical of the Shadow than anything else. Now it's become a little bit more one-sided as the Shadow are realizing their key to victory. But Novant, I'm interested in your thoughts. What can the Sharks do here to try and give themselves a little bit cleaner of a rotation?
Well, one thing is you gotta do the small passes. Give your partner a chance to move up the pitch. You can have secure passes. Banging and clanging is great. But when the crossbar is acting the way it is, and you're down by 2, it isn't the safest way to do that.
Yeah, trying to develop a little bit greater plays with some more intricacy is definitely going to help them. And well, not committing too far at midfield might do them some good as well. Philo scoring the 3rd goal of the game, and it's another open net.
This one here is puzzling because this shouldn't have happened in any other rotations. Even if you're going with an unorthodox one, you left an open lane down Broad Street, 3-0 Shadow. And, well, if I'm the Shadow supporters right now, you got to cheer they clamp down when they can because they're up by 3 and more can come.
And at this point, I'm wondering if we're starting to see a flip of the script here. The first 2 games, like we said, not necessarily as clean as we might have expected out of both of the teams, but as they start to figure out their strategies, Shadow are really doubling down upon some of the greater things they did, and they're eliminating the issues they had. Their aggression is still there, but their double commitments is not there nearly as much. They're getting a much better rotation, and at 3-0, I do kind of wonder what the Sharks' response is going to look like in game number 4.
Yeah, so for those of you who are just new to the Rocket League sport, sometimes you have a plan all you want, but when you have a team, like you see right there with Phil's another goal right there, when you have a team that's playing so unorthodox, almost like a curveball, or a sucker punch, or a hook shot, it puts you off of your game plan. You're seeing the Sharks trying to adapt. They're getting a 404 server error, and now they're looking at a 4-goal deficit.
This is kind of incredible. It's not only, I would say, incredible because of the fact that we're seeing such a turnaround out of the Shadow, but the Sharks right now are not seemingly understanding why they're getting punished on repeat here. They're double committing more and more and more, and as you see Hobo dive all the way there as the 3rd man, there's no real reason for them to do that. Yes, Bledsoe does get back in time, but they're starting to make a lot of weird over-aggressive plays, and I do really think that it is the pressure that you were speaking upon earlier, Novanta. When you get on stream like this, it is surprising, but it's a completely different ballgame than off stream.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're up by 2 games, you make 1 mistake, you go, okay, no worries. 2, you go fair play, and that 3rd goal comes in, you go, what's going on? Let's get down. All right, guys, let's go. And everything goes out the window. Composure matters, and right now the Sharks are not showing any of it.
No, as they double commit yet again in front of the net, they will be able to make the save, but they are panicking. And with only 10 seconds left, I don't necessarily think that they're going to be able to bring this one back. Well, I don't even not necessarily think. It's not possible for them to bring this one back at this point, but I think they are still in this series. Shadow do take their first game of the series and bring themselves to a 2-1 scoreline. But after such a one-sided game number 3, I gotta say, they kind of look poised to make the reverse sweep happen.
Reverse sweeps are rare, sort of, kind of, but when they do happen, it has a bit of poetic justice. What we saw here was the scene of Indiana Jones. The Sharks were filling that sword for 2 games, and the Shadow took out the revolver. Now, if you're a Shadow supporter or a Shadow player, it's now time to double down what you did in Game 3 and apply that to Game 4, because it's absolutely working, it's effective. You let 4 goals go by a Champion League level team, that means it is primed to work again. Give yourself an opportunity to make that happen.
Yeah, 100%. It's very doable. I think the strategy they had in that game was by far the cleanest that we've seen out of either team, to be honest. And part of the reason was I think that the pace of play and the way that it was controlled was really in the Shadow's hand. No matter what they did, they tried to get them disoriented. They tried to make them feel like at some point that they were on their back heel, but that never happened. The Sharks were never able to put the Shadow on their back heel and make them feel uncomfortable. And as a result, the Shadow just kind of ran that entire game at the pace that they wanted, with the passing plays they wanted, and with the rotations that they wanted.
Yeah, disorientation is the name of the game. Like I said, look at the Sharks had a plan, a game plan that worked for them pretty much cleanly in game one, not so much in game two, but both those games went to overtime. And after that, it became a whole different game. It was all shadow. They tightened up their own rotations. They spread out in the mid side of the pitch. And well, when you give yourself the space and you can see the vision downfield of where your partners are, where your teammates are, then that is just an open season for shots on net.
Yeah, 100%. And that foresight is one of the biggest things to have on the pitch in Rocket League. If you are able to connect with your teammates to the correct degree, there's almost nothing a team can do because there's just such good passing plays, especially at this level. If you are able to connect with your teammates, a lot of teams aren't really going to know how to be able to cut off those passing lanes correctly. Yes, they can try to, but it's something we were talking about earlier. A lot of what you should be seeing at this rank is pressure upon a person, trying to make sure that they are uncomfortable and forcing them into an error. Passing lane cutoffs are kind of something I would say a little bit more complicated than a lot of the players at this rank can figure out. When they try to go for passing lane cutoffs, most of the time it just kind of ends in an overcommitment that leaves them vulnerable.
Doesn't mean all is lost for the Sharks yet. You got to make a decision. You got to do either a zone defense or a man-to-man. But what you can't do is have all of your players on one side of the pitch, leaving the entire mid-pitch completely undefended for a banger of a goal. It's great. We'll clip it out. We'll probably put it play of the week. The winner might get a case of balls Guarana, but that can't happen, especially at this level, especially in the course of the series against a division rival. And hopefully that goal in particular is in their minds as you head over to Utopia Coliseum for Game 4.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the biggest things, is making sure to keep that focus the entirety of this game. But I'm really curious to see what type of response we see out of the Sharks here, because if the Sharks play how they did in games 1 and 2, I think they do have a shot to try and bring down the Shadow. But I think part of the reason we're also seeing the Shadow be so successful in game number 3 is that they're recognizing that there isn't necessarily a winning strategy out of the Sharks with what they were doing in games 1 and 2. Yes, it did win for the first 2 games, but long-term, teams are going to figure out how to play that. So the Sharks right now, I'm interested to see if they make the necessary adjustments.
This is why I love best of 5 series, because it really does challenge any team to have an A strategy, an A part 2 strategy, and a couple of B's and C's if those don't work out, because you can't just steamroll a team unless you're in a completely different leagues without finding ways to tweak your strategy in the run of play. And I think we got word from MLE office that there's going to be a substitute there, Bass.
Indeed, there is. It looks like Bledsoe is not going to be playing the next 2 games. Instead, Addy is going to be in for the Sharks. And now I'm a little bit more curious at what type of rotations we're going to see, because part of the reasons that I think we weren't seeing the Sharks play as well as they needed to is we kept mentioning the double commitments and that missed rotation that we saw in the field. Throwing in a substitute sometimes can help, but sometimes it can also just throw off that rotation so far that you never really recover. So for the Sharks right now, I've got my fingers crossed. Hopefully this is a substitute that you need, a super sub indeed.
Yeah, Addy's in for Bledsoe. Tactical idea. You're right. It looked like Bledsoe was the one up top. I hate using the term, but the striker here in this case. Most of the passes were fed to Bledsoe to score. And well, I assume that if it's not due to any kind of server issue or personal illness, that this is really more of a chemistry play. Having the teams to work better in tandem may not be the strongest scorer, but allowing a team to have a little bit strength of being rotating terms of being shooters and defenders and all that stuff as well. So hopefully Addy has a lot for the Sharks here. They need to turn this around. Even though they have 2 games in hand, it's been all shadow for about a game and a half.
Yeah, and sometimes it really can be beneficial to not have that striker on field, because a lot of the reason we were seeing issues with the Sharks was the aggression that they were putting out. So if you do take out a little bit too much aggression, sometimes that can balance out a little bit more correctly. So we're going to have to see. That middle ground is something we've spoken upon many, many times here today, and if they can't find that perfect middle ground, I really do think that this is Shadow Series to win.
Shadow Series to win, and I'm sure the Shadows will definitely appreciate that after being written off by these casters in the booth for a game and a half. And yeah, you're right. And it's not even like their technical skill, which we've seen, or the rotations being tightened up, which we've seen. It's actually the pace of which they done it. It wasn't like they got their act together in game 5 and pulled one back. It takes a lot for a team to understand what they're doing, understand when they're not going 100% in a particular area, and shore that up in the run of play in the middle of a series where it's still winnable. We play all 5 series here at MLE, so you got to go the distance, but I like the fact that Shadow made it work for them.
Yeah, 100%. I really do think that they are starting to play for the distance specifically as well, because if they take this game, they really are in a great position to make the reverse sweep happen. They will have all the momentum in their favor. They will be, in my opinion, the favorites going into game number 5 if they can win game number 4. But it's really all speculation at this point. I'm so curious to see what type of Sharks team we have, because if the Sharks are good enough here with their substitute, there might just be a chance that the Shadow have no idea how to counterattack that.
Yeah, a lot of times it might be a little too late. You talk about having plan A, plan Bs, and plan Cs. You get kind of used to the styles of your opponents when you're on the pitch in the run of it. Yeah, you can do a tactical change or whiff, but you kind of know if this person is more of a ground-based person, this person likes to go to the sky, use the walls. When you bring in a completely different person, again, we're still only in the second week of season 12 of MLE, the greatest MLE season ever. You may not know much about your other opponents on teams, the depth of what an organization or franchise has. So it is playing Russian roulette. It is having that little bit of a what's going to be behind this box vibe. And well, like I said before, it comes down now to the more of a shadow. If they can double down with their own plans and strategy, make the Sharks play their game despite the roster on the pitch, and may give themselves an advantage when it comes to this series.
100%. And it's going to be very interesting to see, but I'm really curious, I would say, more than anything, is about what type of pace we're going to see in this next game as well, because that's something that's varied pretty much every game. Game number 1 was all fire, just completely go, 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 go. Teams taking shots on repeat, teams continually peppering the back of the net, making sure that that pressure was there. And then game number 2, it really slowed down. All of a sudden, everything was very slow paced. They were making sure that they were playing patiently, that they weren't being too aggressive. Game number 3 was a little bit of that middle ground where we did see some really aggressive plays. We did see some very passive plays, but I'm very curious to see what type of play style we see from both teams, because if the Shadow are able to do what they want, they will probably dictate the pace of play to be a bit more varied, and they'll kind of just force the Sharks into their over-aggression again. But if the Sharks can figure out a good rotation, we could really see either that over-aggression that we saw in game number 1 or that entire passiveness that we saw in game number 2.
Well, we can't discuss all of that without discussing the 900-pound gorilla, the elephant in the room, the delays here, the technical issue. Thanks for bearing with us here on the stream. And, well, you and I both know it doesn't matter if you're talking about Tiddlywinks or Rocket League or pub darts. When you have yourself in the zone, the worst thing you can do is being pulled away from that, away from performing. You got to worry about how you're going to keep yourselves warm. You got to worry about whether or not you still have the game sense in the run of it with these delays. And hopefully both teams can find a way to adjust to that.
Yeah, I would say that, one of the more interesting things here is going to be, like you said, that recovery coming back from a game that we just saw. In your opinion, do you think that this is going to benefit the Sharks more than the Shadow, or do you think the Shadow now just have a little bit of time where they can discuss more strategy and double down upon the good things they did in game number 3?
Well, on paper, that benefits the Sharks. They got hit for a loop, sucker punch, if you will, and they have some time, some space to breathe. But when you have that time, you got to come up with a different plan. And I will see that now with the tactical shift. So hopefully that works for them. But usually when you have the hot hand and someone goes, hey, let's take a break, it's kind of the worst for that hot hand. So if the Shadow do not find a way to win this series, I can't mention this delay here, whether or not how much it would affect them.
Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting one. This delay is going to be extremely, extremely spicy, and we're starting to realize, I think, part of where the technical issues are starting to develop. I think that Rocket League somehow, despite having the same credentials, might have made 2 lobbies with the exact same credentials, as we're hanging out with the Shadows, and it sounds like our producer might be hanging out with the Sharks in a different lobby.
Wait, it's an alternate dimension of lobbies? Why was I not informed of this? Is there another Novanta somewhere else? Like, is he cool? Like, I have no idea.
Novanta, no matter what, you are cool. I don't think it's possible to make you uncool, brother.
On. Go on. Well, we're going to get ourselves in here for actually have our game 4. Game 4 of this 5-game series set back at the Utopia Coliseum, and it's getting the lobby prepped up, and I think we're finally getting everyone in this one to have it start up soon.
Yeah, and I think there we are. All right, I think everybody is finally joining up. The technical issues have been solved, and we're just about ready to get this one underway. Novanta, any early predictions with this game? Do you think that this one's going to be another one for the Shadow when we see a game 5 at a 2-2 where they can reverse sweep, or do you think that the Sharks are going to actually be able to make that rebound?
I was mentioning it quite before. It's really a time for the Sharks to implement a brand new strategy with a new player in the pitch. I have to give them the edge just because it's sight unseen. The Shadow is pretty strong, but they are a good reactionary team. I have not seen them be the one to strike first, and let's see if the Sharks can use that to their advantage.
Yeah, we're going to have to find out. Looks like we're still testing out the lobby real quick, so as soon as we get this one ready, I think we should be going. And I'm very curious, I will say, I keep repeating, what type of pace of play are we going to see here? And it's because it really has piqued my interest so many different times, no matter what the level is, all the way from bronze up to SSL. Sometimes you can just see these games where you get a little bit of a break like this, and then everything gets flipped on its head. So a little part of me honestly really does want to go back to that shootout we saw in game number 1. That was just so entertaining to watch.
Yeah, shootouts are always fun because then it realizes, like, you know what, defense is great, but starting is dope too. You know what I'm saying? But I do love series that gives us a little bit of each. That gives us the shootouts, that gives us the defense. As a caster, I love it. As a fan, I love it because it gives you something for everything. So there's some defensive people, there's some wall people, there's some fake out jukes 1v1 type deal. But you're right. I want this after the delay we've had to give our fans a bit of a treat with a little bit more of that ball net action for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I do think that this is going to be a treat no matter what, though, because this has been a series to, I'd say, write home about already here. 3 games with such close intensity, 2 overtimes, I believe, in a row, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's something about this series. It's what a way to kick off MLE for the day here on the MLE2 channel. It's really just been incredible action all around. And Novanta, honestly, I don't think there's any other caster I would have wanted to cast this one with.
Oh, thanks, Bass from the past. You're my favorite Bass of all time, man. Top tier. But we're going to get started soon, I think, once we go. But I understand it, man. MLE, if you're not following the channels, please do. This is the second stream, GG2. Follow this one in the mainstream, MLE Esports GG. And if you want to be a member of MLE, you can do that. There's going to be commands in the chat so you can sign up. Just like me, I was watching the stream about a year ago this time, put my name in there. I waited a couple days, and I was too in the MLE fold. So much fun to be a part of this organization and to meet people, my man Bass.
Yeah, I'm very, very glad that we finally got to meet Novanta because this was one of these things where we had the chance to, I would say, talk a couple of times outside of MLE, but to be able to cast in MLE with you, it's just such a pleasure, to put it simply at this point. I'm very, very excited to see what this game holds, and I think that, honestly, I'm excited to see what the season holds, my friend. I'm going to be watching you in the NFL. I really do want to see what you're able to pull out in that league.
Oh, well, no pressure then. Ooh, talk about stream pressure, having casters watch you play. Like, oh, Novanta, he whiffed that one. What was he thinking? No, but I love the fact that we have such a community here growing, and likewise as well. And let me turn the tables on you. I know you're kind of newer into the MLE fold. Like, if you were to describe this organization to someone on the outside, what would you say? What would you tell them?
Community. That's one of the biggest things that I talk about here when it comes to MLE. I've spoken about MLE to many different people in the Rocket League scene, and while there are many different groups out there that focus on trying to, make these smaller leagues and make them pop up, I don't even think I can call MLE a small league anymore. We've got such a deep roster here with casters, producers, broadcasters, players, coaches, managers, everything you could look for, MLE has an option for. So if you want to get involved in the Rocket League scene, I 100,000% agree with you, Novanta. I think this is a great place to do so, and you can just learn so much from every player that's here.
Absolutely. Want to thank everyone in the chat bearing with us through our technical delays. The Shark and Shadow are heading to game 4. You have the Sharks with 2 games to their series tally. The Shadow has 1, and it's a best of 5. It's a 5-game set. We play all 5 games here in MLE. And game 4 is about to start right now, Utopia Coliseum.
I think we are finally underway. Game number 4. It is the chance for the Shadow to continue the momentum they had from game number 3. A chance for the Sharks to try and wrap up the series and guarantee themselves the win, but they need to hit shots like that. Open net, and Storm puts it into the backboard.
Well, they're going to rue that opportunity because that was the time I was telling you about striking hard and fast. Am I right?
Yes, I'm just a little speechless. I don't know what to say. Wait a minute. This happened. What is going on in game number 4? The Sharks up 1-0.
The Sharks had a mission, and that was a brand new roster. They gotta go hard, fast, Cobra Kai style, and they make it happen 1-0.
Oh my word, Addy already showing their hand very early. Jimmer just sitting there ready for the save, and all of a sudden just gets blasted from the side swiped out of the way, and 1-0 it becomes for the Sharks, but they've got to be careful. Here comes the response already. Shadow trying to press the issue, and they will also get an open net. 1-1 it becomes.
Well, what I said about that advantage, that's quickly evaporated because the Shadow make quick work of that one.
I guess it is a shootout, Novanta. We were mentioning we could see a couple of different strategies in this one, but so far with 2 goals in 30 seconds, this might just be as high-octane a gameplay as game number 1 was.
Well, game number 1 is what Bass wanted, and whatever Bass wants, Bass gets. Not a minute has elapsed, and we have 2 goals past the net.
I think that's a little bit more of an exaggeration than I can bring back up, but I appreciate that you think I have that type of power. The caster curse is definitely, I'd say, my friend on the field, but so far, at least today, I've been able to avoid it, knock on wood, as all of a sudden it's back into the Shadow half. They're going to try to avoid another open net here, and as Yoko plays very patiently, they should be prepared for whatever comes their way. Storm, though, has good center here. Hobo is up for this one, but so is Jimmer, and they will get it all the way into their opponent's half and set up their own chance now. Shadow wants to capitalize upon the little bit of awkwardness we're seeing out of the Sharks, but I will say, so far so good with the changeout. I think the super sub for Addy was indeed a very good decision.
You're seeing a lot more confidence between Hobo and Storm using Addy as part of the attack and the defense, but despite that, the Shadow have another one on the board.
Well, it's unfortunate. The minute that we start to mention how well Addy is playing, they get caught jumping a little bit too early and leave their teammates to try and make the save in their place. 1-2 it becomes. The Shadow doing a good job so far here of taking advantage of the awkward play on defense, but I do think part of that is just the fact that Addy is starting to figure out their rotation in this game. Obviously can try and figure out a little bit more where they need to be at the right time. I think those opportunities are going to get shut down. But speaking of opportunities, Jimmer with a cross-court shot and another open defense.
Well, live fast, die young. I was going to say the pace of play is picked up for both sides, but that was a clear. That was a bit wayward, and it was an own goal. 3-1 the Shadow. Back to the last game. Spirit the Shadow are rolling.
Yeah, they're really taking advantage of all of this awkwardness, and that's part of what gives them such a huge advantage in itself, is that they see these weird plays on defense out of the Sharks, and they don't really double down on it. They just kind of wait, look for the opportunity, and then when it arises, they make the most of it. And I think the Sharks need to take a page out of the Shadow's book exactly for that. As they get back on defense one more time, no one is home. Jimmer might have an open net to shoot upon, but Adiously does get in the way. Addy doing what they need to make that super sub position a solidified starting role.
Super subs are always a mixed bag just because of the different levels of being warm in one team, but Addy isn't enough to run with the Sharks when needed. And while they put them back within one, this play right here is a whole different page than we saw in the first game. The Sharks are a little bit faster, not quite as clean as they need to be, but they pull back a 2-goal deficit. 3-2, Shadow.
Good stuff from the Sharks there, especially that aggression on the side. They were not expecting that. I believe the last one back was Philo and just kind of stood there thinking that they had time to make it cleaner clear, but as a diving player comes through, the Sharks will not allow that, and maybe that's how the Sharks start to get back into this one. They start to get a little bit more aggressive. Ooh, double commits like that are not going to help them, but luckily enough, the bump to the ceiling is going to buy some more time for Addy to try and set this one up. Gets a pass to the center. Storm is there, but they just heavily touch it, which throws the ball to the other team. I'm liking the ideas of pass and play for Vonda, but this is something you and I hinted at earlier. Overly aggressive and heavier touches are not always going to be that beneficial.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be beneficial, but we're seeing both squads, especially the Sharks, try different new things, and I'm not sure they have I'm not sure they have a dedicated strategy, but they do have some tools at their disposal, and so a little bit of filling out process. It's unfortunate it's happening in Game 4, but whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's just kind of the way that it is the way the cookie crumbles, and as they do have the sub in, they are indeed trying to figure out what type of rotation they want to play. A couple more double commitments have shown since we last mentioned it, but they're starting to play with a little bit less full intention on those double commitments. It's the idea the start of the rotation doesn't go right, but then someone is able to back off and figure out the right place and the right time to be at. That's why they're going to get themselves another offense here. Hobo sends this one into the backboard where Yoko is waiting, but as Adiously also waits out at midfield, there might be a chance here. Philo to the center, and a demo from Jimmers is actually going to alleviate a whole lot of pressure. A good demo at the right time, and the Shadow will continue their lead.
The Shadow has their lead about a minute to go now. They do need that insurance there because these goals come thick and fast. That's why you need an insurance goal, because Addy, super sub himself, makes it level.
And you called it. The caster is showing its face today in one of the most, I'd say, on-point calls of the entire day. You mentioned all it takes is one play, and that's all that they needed. The Sharks are back to a tied ball game, and with a minute left, they are poised to try and take the series lead, and which would give them the win indefinitely.
Well, that's the win-lose you need, because again, these division rivals here. Best of 5 series set in the Orange Conference, the Tropic Division. Shadow, Sharks, Game 4. We're tied in the final minute of this one.
A very tense back and forth this is going to be, and this is where those stream nerves start to show themselves more than ever. They know what's at stake right now. For the Shadow, it's a chance for them to stay in this series. For the Sharks, it's a chance to finish this one out with a win no matter what. As they try to get onto defense once again, or excuse me, offense, they do get blown up, and the Sharks will have to retreat. Storm with a good touch into the corner, but no one's going to be there to follow it up, so they have to dive once again. And as Addy is the only one back due to a demo, the Shadow now have a huge chance here. Philo takes the initial shot. Jimmer is there for the follow-up, and pops it really high. Storm is up for that one. Yoko does not want to commit, and I can understand why. With 10 seconds left, they're trying to figure out if they can get one more offense together here. They just might. Jimmer dives on that one, but a Devil on the backfield is going to leave them exposed. The Shadow need to be careful. Here come the Sharks. Addy has the touch, but can't quite get to it. Probably wanted the reset, but couldn't get it. And 3-3 overtime in game number 4.
Another overtime is unfortunate for both these squads because they've been through so much with the delays and all of that, but this is where teams are made. And so far, I still got to give the edge to the Shadow because they're just that scrappy.
Yeah, it's a very, okay, well, I was going to say it's a very scrappy game, and all of a sudden you called it again. Novanta, the mystic powers you have in this game have brought the Shadow to a 2-2 ball game.
Gotta call me Nova Dramas, man. Shadow Sharks, they tie it up. And game 5 is gonna be a decider in more ways than one.
Novodamus is probably one of the best names I've ever heard. Just know I'm going to remember that forever and always, my friend. I will always remember that because you indeed have propelled the Shadow to a 2-game-in-a-row victory. They are on match point as well as the Sharks, but it really does seem, unfortunately for the Sharks, their strategies that worked in games 1 and 2 are not working now, and they do not know how to adjust as the game continues.
So it wasn't all bad for the Sharks there. I do think the chemistry of having Addy in there was a bit smoother for them, and they did play a better game, a faster game, but ultimately the Shadows had the battering ram. That extra goal in overtime again puts them ahead, and now we have ourselves a tied series heading into game 5. And well, I can say it's anyone's game. I do that for the lulz, but frankly, the way the Shadow are playing, they have a bit of an edge.
Yeah, they really do have a little bit of an edge right now, and I think that the Sharks can really try and pull this one back, but part of the reason that the Shadow have so much of an edge right now is they're the entirety of the offense right now. They are absolutely the aggression needed. They are 11 total shots versus their opponents at 5. They more than double the shots of the Sharks here, and they also had, I think a quarter of the amount of saves. They only had 1 save the entire game. Meanwhile, the Sharks had, I think, 6 saves or something like that. It's one of these things where right now the Shadow are controlling the pace of play. The Sharks are trying to live up to that pace of play and figure out how to counterattack it, but so far they haven't had much success in that counterattack.
Well, if they don't have much success, they're kind of out of time here. 5 minutes on the clock. The name of the game is not dominating. That one's already gone. It's just maintaining a series win. Let's see if they can make that happen.
I believe that they can. It's going to be an interesting back and forth, but I also believe that either team can get this one done early in this game. We've seen it before, and we'll see it again. Momentum, such a huge part of this league, and if they can get an early goal for either team, I would say, it might just be able to give them the momentum necessary to take the win in the series.
Well, wins are great, but either way, it's like what they call a Pyrrhic victory. Like, no one's looking like $1 million after this one. I do think that after this series, as long and drawn out as it is, both squads have to go back and see what worked for them and what didn't. Yeah,
100%. One of the biggest things of a game like this when it's so incredibly close is that I know for me personally, as a coach for the Aviators, this is one of these things where I go, oh, love to see it, because there's so much you can break down here. There's so much you can, I would say, learn from, that you can start to study and figure out where it was going right and where it was going wrong. And, well, I can tell you one place is going wrong right now. The Sharks, again, leaving their defense open. No one home, and 1-0, the Shadow take the lead.
Look at that shot and the disrespect to have that ball just trickle in with nobody around. Are you kidding me? Shadow's up 1-0.
Shadow up 1-0 here in only about a minute time, and unfortunately it's the same old for the Sharks. They are trying to figure out what type of rotation they want to have, and in doing so they are leaving themselves vulnerable on repeat. They need to be careful here because they are not controlling the pace of play, and they are falling victim to doing what the Shadow want, as the Shadow again are in control of the series. I was going to say they're not only in control, but they have a goal, but then the awkwardness in front of the net kind of just had me stand there speechless.
I understand that was an awkward exchange on any level of play there. It could have been another goal scored if I'm not lying to you there, but 1-0 still a Shadow, and you're right, Bass. Besides the fact of the scoreline, this is the Shadows game. The Sharks are just playing in it.
Yeah, 100%. They're just trying to play here. They're trying to wade through the waters as it might be, and they're getting detected on repeat by the lifeguards here, not quite able to sneak undetected, and with about 2 minutes gone, they really need to figure out some sort of plan of attack. They're getting out to midfield here, but not really finding the necessary pressure, and as they're pushed into their back half again, no one dives early enough. Hobo does steal the boost out of midfield here, but Addy just has... Wait a minute, I was going gonna say a standard shot that should be a save, but a miss from Jimmer, and we're all tied up.
Look at the shot right here. It really was kind of the ones that you thought was going to go wide, but the ball held their plans. They're using the woodwork to the advantage, and we're tied up. And of course, being tied is, par for the course in this one.
I gotta wonder if that's gonna give a lot of confidence back to the Sharks now. They get a goal like that, they can probably look and go, hey, they still bleed. The Giants still bleed here. They may not be invincible. There might be a chance. And as Addy goes up for this one, they're really giving themselves the best chance possible. Some good aggression here. An open net, but Jimmer gets back just in time. A bump from Addy would have kept him out of the way, but unfortunately not enough physical play. But I'm loving the adjustments we're seeing out of the Sharks right now. They are keeping up this pressure, and they are rotating 100% correctly.
Rotations are something you should rotate 100% correctly all the time, but I know how it be sometimes, man. And we have ourselves another score here. Shadow found a way to get back out in front.
I feel so bad. The minute I say, hey, they're rotating perfectly, and all of a sudden Addy makes a miss, and Storm is just a bit too far pushed up, gets impatient due to that miss and wants to be the hero, but sometimes you can't really quite be the hero. You just need to be the villain, and that's exactly what the Shadow are doing, punishing from one simple mistake. And they continue with the lead with just about 2 minutes remaining.
Well, yeah, when you say things are perfect, can never go wrong, they always go wrong, right? 2-1 still in favor of the Shadow at best of 5 series. At game 5, both these teams have 2 games apiece, and well, it looks like the Shadow's out for blood. They want the series win. They want that reverse sweep.
They do want that reverse sweep, and they're looking poised to do exactly that. But they need to be careful on defense here. Philo on the backboard has got a lot of pressure coming from the Sharks here. As they go into the corner once again, Hobo trying to just keep this one on the Shadow half. Gets a good 50-50 and then plays a little bit of nuisance play, but unfortunately it's looking like this one's going to be all the way cleared out. Storm does get in the way, but Jimmer's going to have the follow-up shot, and it's off the bar. A chance for a little bit of security, but unfortunately the Shadow can't quite capitalize.
Well, I like insurance as much as the next person, but that's why you can't rush shots like that, because that third goal could have been a dagger, and now this game is very much still in play.
100%, but there's a huge chance now for Philo to try and put one in. Not quite able to get the shot on target, as Hobo makes a pretty easy save, but Jimmer is not going to let this one die yet. Oh no, an own goal from the Sharks is going to cost them a 2-goal deficit.
Do we call that a fancy dagger? Goodness me. 3-1 the Shadow. The own goal before is a pinch in there. And they have 2 goals the Shadow do as they enter the last minute of this Game 5 decider.
Oh, I can't help but feel bad for the Sharks right now. We were mentioning how much they were really starting to make the necessary adjustments, but after a miss on the defense like that where they own goal, oh, wait a minute, they're actually going to still have the confidence. Never mind, I eat my words. One good play in front of the net, and they are back within this one.
This is what we call the fight and the heart. The Sharks did not turn away. They said, don't leave Utopia Coliseum. We're going to give you a show. They're down by 1. They have a minute to get 1 goal across the net. Can they do it?
I think that they just might be able to at least take us to overtime after how many that we've seen so far in this series. It's only right. Oh, my word. But not if Jimmer has anything to say about this. Great shot from Philo. But watch the physical play from Jimmer here. It just says no, sir, to the goalie in net.
Just bullies him, and well, I'm not sure where to call it now because 2 goals down in a minute to go is a whole different pot of pumpkins, my mom would say.
I think it's still doable, but it's really going to be, I'd say, determined a lot off of the amount of pressure they get and how quickly they can do so. One of the biggest things we've seen out of the Sharks right now is that they do get some offensive pressure, but when it comes time for them to get a shot on target, they're not that quick to it. And unfortunately, oh my word, I was going to say the Shadow are. Oh, and they still do secure the goal. I thought they might have given up a huge opportunity there, but luckily enough, the third man comes through and Philo nails this one into the back of the net.
This game is over, done and dusted. The Shadow may quit work of the Sharks in Game 5. 5-2 the scoreline with a little less than a minute to go, but it's academic at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately. So there is a chance for the Sharks, but as they do not win this kickoff basically perfectly, they are wasting valuable time. If Addy can hit this, which they can, there's still a chance though, Fanta. 2 goals in 30 seconds, and when you can score like that, I'm never counting them out.
Well, I was about to close my notebook. I'll open it back up there. 2 goals down, 30 seconds. This game is getting hectic, Bass.
I'm going to be honest. Listen, I don't want to necessarily say that, I'm cheering for the Sharks here, but the audience member in me wants an overtime. We've had so many of them throughout this series, it would only be poetic. Oh, but you got to stop shots like that from Philo. Now that might just be the nail in the coffin, Novanta.
Well, this guy Bass won the shootout. Didn't think it would happen the last minute of the series, but we're getting it anyway. 6-3, and yeah, I am done with all the hope right now. Shadow has this one in spades.
Yeah, this is one of these things where, hey, listen, I appreciate that they are giving us a spectacle to finish this one off. These shots flying all around. 9 total shots in this game. Let's see if we can hit double digits. Pass out to Jimmers, and the shot is on target. Indeed, we do. 3-7 it now becomes, and with 12 seconds left, I just want to see how many goals they can get before the end of regulation.
I just love that tiki-taka passing offense. Jimmer with another scorpion kick. 7-3 the Shadow, and well, if they were playing at this the entire time, this could have been sweep territory, not reverse sweep territory.
100%. They found their groove, and they never let go of it, and indeed, they do get the reverse sweep 3 games in a row. And I will say the Sharks played a pretty good game. They did make the necessary adjustments, but the unfortunate truth was once the Shadows started rolling, you couldn't really stop them. Inertia giving them everything they need and giving them the win in the series. Shadow take game number 5 and win the series 3-2.
Talk about back and forth. After the first game, we're about to anoint the Sharks as the winner of the series, but the Shadow did the impossible nearly and found a way to not only come back and win the series, but do so with such an emphatic fashion in Game 5 and put the whole division and conference on notice.
Oh, indeed they did. I would say more than just that. I'd say everybody on notice at this point, because if you think that you've got the Shadow wrapped up at any point, this proves otherwise. The reverse sweep is very much a viable possibility for this team at any single moment, because once they find that ability, they really just continue to go with it throughout the entire series. And Novant, I'm going to be honest, I don't think we could have asked for a better first series of the day.
Yeah, and it's only the first one. We have 3 more series in this channel. And of course, channel 1, MLE Esports, is live too, even more action. So if you love Rocket League, you love MLE, you're in the right spot.
Absolutely. And that was series number 1 for the day, you guys. But as Novanta said, we are not quite done. We're going to go to a little bit of a break, get the second game set up. But when we return, even more MLE action. You guys are not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned. We will see you guys in just a couple of moments.